My guest this week is EVA WALKER. EVA is a Seattle-based musician and radio host, and she's the co-founder of the rock and roll band The Blacktones. And she's previously the host of KEXP's long-running show Audio Oasis, and currently the host of Early. In addition to making music, she has produced many concerts and events. Her first one at 16 years old was to help the victims of Hurricane Katrina, and her latest, at 32 years old, was an event for the BBC's Art Hour on tour. Her band The Blacktones have played with acts such as Mavis Staples, Weezer, Fishbone, Death Cab for Cutie, and they opened a 5-week national tour for Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. WALKER has also worked and collaborated with members of Pearl Jam, Barrett Martin of the Screaming Trees, and 3-time Grammy winner Brazilian legend Nando Reis. Whether soloing on electric guitar and knee-high white boots or singing with her entire family on stage, WALKER is a sought-after artist and culture curator in Seattle's thriving music community. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to Revolutions Per Movie, EVA WALKER. Hi!
Yay! Hi, Chris.
So good to see you.
You too.
You picked the film Stop Making Sense, the 1984 classic directed by Jonathan Demme. But I want to talk about the Blacktones. How is it being in a band with your twin? I mean, is that an easy relationship?
I wouldn't say there's any bad parts to it, honestly. Even if we argue about something or whatever, it actually makes it easier because we know each other really well. And siblings argue sometimes, it's fine. Because we're always gonna love each other and go back to each other, you know? But I was a lot more introverted than I am now. I'm still pretty introverted, but not as much as I was when I was younger. So it was one of those things that was like, I don't know if I could do this with anyone to the degree I want to do this with anyone that I'm not related to. It's hard for me to get really close to people, and my twin brother's my best friend. So when he told me he wanted to learn drums, I was stoked. I was like, yes, okay. So I taught him drums one summer.
That's amazing.
I think we started on our birthday. And then that fall, we had our first show. That was 2011. And it's great. I mean, yeah, it's great. We were each other's, playmates as kids, and now we're each other's bandmates as adults. It's freaking perfect.
So how do you write the music between the two of you?
Well, there was a lot of songs that I had written previous to the band starting. And I do write a lot, at least my parts, alone. But it's become more collaborative where we're just kind of jam now, or he'll come to me with the drum beat, hey, look at this beat I learned. Can you put something to it? And that's actually how The Key of Black was written.
Okay.
Yeah, so I give him credit for that song, or at least initiating the ideas for that song. But yeah, just ideas that we have. I write I shouldn't say I write a lot. When I write, it's usually, me in my room trying to like something. I don't write a lot of music because I hate everything I write. So
Oh, welcome to the club.
yeah, I heard
totally
it was a
that
club,
way.
and that was the membership requirement.
I hate so many of the songs I write, and then I'll be like, all right, 2 of this 100 are worth it. I'm jealous of people who seem to just be able to
put it out,
barf out all that, but that is not me. So welcome. Nice to welcome you into this.
I'm honored to be
club.
In the club. It's a stressful club. It's stressful as hell.
It is.
But
It is, because I think there's a pressure to look at others and be like, oh, well, why can't I write 4 albums like Elvis Costello in 2 years, or, Robert Pollard? And it's or even the Talking Heads were making, these albums were coming out every 10 months. Yeah, it's just an amazing amount it's just a different gear. I don't know. It's kind of also nice to be protective of something and be like, I know this is not as good. I have to go through the thing to get to the good thing.
Yeah. I just want it to be the best I know it could be,
Totally. And what about your mom? I saw some footage of her on stage at Bumper Shoot.
Yeah.
That was amazing. So when did she enter into the picture for the
Um,
band?
oh man, I don't remember what year it was, but it was at the old Crocodile, and
Hmm.
Hobosexual was doing a headlining show, and they asked us to open, and I think Night Train was the main support, and then it was them, and we were like, "Whoa, we're playing the Crocodile!" At the time, that was a big deal, for
Sure.
like a small indie band.
Well, and you grew up in Seattle, right? So it was like
Yeah,
the
so
legend. Yes.
exactly. There's all these like venues you want to check off of your list that you want to play at, right? And so it was our first time playing the Crocodile, so I wanted to make it big. So I had my sister singing backup and my mom singing backup. But to start the show, I don't think we started the show with it. I don't really remember, but I had my mom tap dance because she tap dances.
Oh
And
my
so she was
God.
tap dancing to the Key of Black with like this fringe dress on. And people were like, what the hell is going on? What is this? Who is this band?
Uh-huh.
And I just like went all out. I was like, okay, mom, you're gonna dance, Gigi, you're gonna sing, we're gonna do this, and just like went nuts. And people loved it. And my mom loves being on stage. Like for her career, she was an educator, a principal, teacher,
Okay.
but her first love was dance, and she just likes performing. And so now that she's retired, she can kind of live that performance like dream out through us. And I was like, yeah, Ma, give her a tambourine. Like, you come and sing whenever you want on stage. We have a routine. She knows her parts, and she sang on I think except one, at every show on the 5-week tour, and the crowd loved her. She got the biggest roar every time. And I was like, every time I introduced her, and everyone was just like stoked, like, oh my God, your mom is here performing with you on tour. This is amazing.
And she took to touring. She was like, "Get me in the van."
Yeah, she loved it. She just, she didn't have to, we didn't make her carry much, but so it was kind of easy for her. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, she likes traveling, and she just she likes being included and stuff, and she's been so supportive and of everything that,
That's killer.
I was like, yeah.
That's killer. The I wanted to talk to you about your move to the morning shift too, and about thinking about music in the morning. When I was in college, I had a radio show at the Evergreen radio station, Chaos, and Calvin Johnson was my station manager from K Records, and John Goodmanson, the producer, and myself met in the lobby, and he just basically said, "You're on from midnight till 6 in the morning." And I just remember around 4 o'clock in the morning, just not even really understanding music anymore. How do you get into that gear to be able to even talk or let alone listen to music that early in the morning?
Yeah, well, you had a very long shift. A lot of the shows are um the longest shows are 4 hours, and they're overnight 1 to 5 during the weekdays. But most of the shows are 3 hours. My show is 2 hours.
Okay.
Um, so it's not I don't know if I could do 6 hours that
We were
early. That's really
young, and
long.
it was like it was trial by fire. It was like if you can get through this, then we moved. We had a 9 to 11 slot, like
Yeah.
6 months later. But it was like you have to show your dedication.
Yeah. Oh, I like this question you asked though, because then it's gonna have me talk about my sleep a bit. So, I'll try to keep it quick. Um, I always thought I was insomniac because my sleep was always broken, and that was sort of the answer I had. And now I think about, it, I'm like, it was kind of the lazy answer, like, oh, I have insomnia, I have insomnia. But I just kind of discovered that I am a segmented sleeper, which is um, for people who don't know, means that you kind of split your sleep up into two or more sessions. And I do that naturally. And I've done that for years. I just didn't know what that was called. And because I wasn't sleeping 6 to 8 hours straight, I just thought, oh, I have insomnia. So that made it easier to say yes to early, because I was like, well, I'm already up at 3 and I'd love to be a 5-day a week DJ. I started coming out on the couch at about 3:30, 4, and I would listen to music, and that was me researching what I wanted to hear that early in the morning. So I was listening to songs that like felt good
Oh wow.
at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and so on. And that helped me prepare for what the show is now. And so things that worked for me were craft work worked for me. A lot of new wave, also really old blues from like the 1920s. I
Yes.
love that stuff. Certain soul songs, maybe like Curtis Mayfield, things like that. Even Public Enemy worked for me. Certain songs worked that early in the morning. So that segmented sleep helped me prepare for this shift
You're made for it.
in a really cool way. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I was like, oh well, this is I never someone would have told me years and years ago when I was having this sleep cycle that this is gonna be really useful in your career someday.
Oh my God, that's so
I
great.
wouldn't have believed them. Yeah.
Is there a favorite morning song you have that just is just perfection?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. I think my go-to would be Computer Love from Kraftwerk.
Oh, that's such a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, it works very well.
We're going to get into it a bit here talking about Stop Making Sense. That was my parents' music. My dad was an architect. And so that was my dad listened to Kraftwerk and things. And his band was the Talking Heads. So that was like my parents' music, right?
Mm,
And I thought it was a little square.
yeah.
It was so funny. So my parents took me to see the tour that became Stop Making Sense as a holiday present for the whole family. That was our gift. And I was so not looking forward to it and cynical.
Really?
Yes, because I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
Speaking in Tongues had come out. And I was like, it's kind of pop. It's not as weird. They're kind of going for it. And it was one of the best shows I've ever seen because I was transformed. I went from, I, I kind of changed that night from being like, you need to just be, you can't be a snob. You can't be, I mean, at 13, I was already a snob. And I think that was part of it was I had the shield of like the music I loved. I was like, I had to be protective of it because, I could be picked on for liking weird music back then.
Yeah.
So, but over the course of the concert, I just fell in love with it. And I just fell in love with the Talking Heads. And so to have this film documented was a really big thing for me too, because it was just such a big moment and then it was just gone. And all I had was just pictures in my mind. So had you heard much of their music before you saw the film?
You know what? Yes, I had heard them. And I liked the Talking Heads. It was like my classic rock phase, my blues like phase, which has never ended, never will end. And then everything else, and that included the Talking Heads.
Okay.
And so okay, I do remember it was, oh God, probably 10 or so years ago now that I'd like to go down YouTube wormholes. That's like my segment I have on KEXP, the Walker wormhole Wednesday. And before obviously radio, I was on radio and stuff, I would just scroll YouTube and I found Talking Heads song, or I found the performance of This Will Be the Place. Yeah, yeah. That was the first performance of that movie that I saw on YouTube. And the thing that made me first explore the Talking Heads, so now I'm going back a little bit more, to begin with was, and I've talked about this on the radio a little bit, was I would drive in a car, I would always have the classic rock station on, and Once in a Lifetime would come on. And for some reason, that song freaked me out. I don't know why. My brain was like, this is a weird, creepy sounding song. It freaked me out. And then I became intrigued by it. And so I think what happened was I was watching that music video, which was equally creeped me out because David Byrne is like this kind of like Grace Jones, where they have this kind of uncanny valley kind of way of entertaining people where it's just like, is this
Yes.
reality? But it's not really, it just kind of like mind fuck you a little bit with their visuals. And I love it. And so it started with Once in a Lifetime, and I saw the music video, and then I explored more. And then I found Stop Making Sense, but I only had seen the This Must Be the Place performance. And then I, at some point, I saw it was a whole movie and ended up watching that. And I remember sharing the video with my brother, and he ended up loving This Must Be the Place. And it ended up being like I think a song that him and his wife at the time like shared together. So it like kind of entered his life in a significant way. Um, but yeah, so that was, I mean, that was years ago, just thinking about it now.
Well, those moments are so great because those moments that kind of scare you in music a bit, but you can't put your
Yeah.
finger on it. Like 10 cc's I'm Not in Love for some reason was so creepy and sad and dense, and it was like it was pushing on me in a really weird way. And I love those kind of experiences,
Yeah.
that things that just chemically change you. um and then it's so funny in retrospect. You look back on it and you're like, it's just part of your DNA now.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you're like, oh, I've seen the video a million times, I've heard the song, I can play it backwards and forwards. But Grace Jones thing is a really great analogy because they both do a lot with a little,
Hmm.
like the turn of a head or just the move of an arm.
Or the like the aerodynamic like shapes or the
Yes.
geometrical sharp edges and shapes of like either what they're wearing or how a picture's done. And it's they're both bizarre in a really great way.
Yes.
And that was also a way the way I was introduced to craft work. I was like, this is bizarre. I saw that music video from the 70s of the robots, and I was like, this is weird.
It is.
And then I loved it. And it's funny, it's like if that's my reaction, then I'm gonna it stays in my brain. I'm like, I need to further explore this, even though it's kind
Yes.
of creeping me out a bit. And then I end up being a huge fan.
Well, there's even moments seeing this concert tour live that really unnerved me. Having the audience lights all the way up and David Byrne walk out on an empty stage where you see the back of the
Yes.
theater and people kind of milling around the side, you almost felt like, oh shit, they've made a mistake. People are still finding their seats. And then he starts into, Psycho Killer with the boombox.
Yeah.
And it was just such a great little entryway, but there was just little moments. Like I remember when they bring out the band members one by one. Tina Weymouth comes out next and does Heaven. And during that, they start pulling out the riser with the drum set. And I'll never forget the audience just, and it's in the film, but the audience just goes, yeah. Like they're so excited that a drum set is being pulled out
Yeah.
during this really beautiful two-person song. And I just remember getting the chills of like, I don't know what's gonna happen. It seems really quaint, but I was 13 or something like that, and I still get that way with shows. Like I can get overwhelmed with live music and an audience and a show experience. But I just remember that it seemed really masterful that they just knew that, okay, we're gonna have some roadies bringing stuff out now, and we're gonna have some rock soon. They knew that an
I'm
audience would cheer just that moment of an object being dragged on stage.
I'm so jealous that you got to witness and see that in person. Like that's just, and
Yes.
I mean, yeah, and that's what I loved about just the buildup of the movie, where they're pretty much putting the stage together as part of the performance. It's visual, like a visual art piece as well as, a concert, and it's amazing. And then on top of that, they're all just wearing this very muted gray color, like it's and the music's funky as hell. It's like
Yes.
they David Byrne, like Grace Jones, and like people that kind of, and like Kate Bush and Kraftwerk, that just like these contrasting things you
Yes.
know what I mean? It's just like it's amazing, and I love that stuff. And they do a really good job at executing that. And during the pandemic, when the pandemic started, when the stay-at-home order started, um, my husband and I had both had seen the movie already and all that, and we saw it actually at the theater. It was in the movie theater, not that maybe a few years ago. Um, our local movie theater was just showing it. And we were like, let's go see it. But on the first day of the like shutdown, my husband put on Stop Making Sense, and we were watching that every morning, making cookies during the first part of the pandemic of the stay-at-home order, and that like got us through this weird change of like, wait, what's happening? Um,
No,
yeah,
I'm well aware that I was lucky to see it, and again, I did change my attitude. I mean, I was very fortunate to have parents who were even interested in something like that and bringing their kids to it, rather than being like, we're gonna go out and see this. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. The outfits you talk about, Chris Franz was also supposed to wear like a really muted suit, but
yeah. He's got
it
like a turquoise shirt on.
yes, because he had it at the dry cleaners and it didn't come back on time, and he had to wear that shirt for continuity all the time for the rest of the 3 day shoot that they did in
Oh,
Hollywood. But I can imagine David Byrne being so upset
I
at that,
know.
because I think the band was also starting to fracture a bit. They'd already taken
Yeah.
3 years off between Remain in Light. They were playing out with a version of this band. Steven Scales, the percussionist, was with them. Bernie Worrell
Yep.
from Funkadelic and P-Funk was with them. And I think Lynn,
Lynn Mayberry and Ednah
yes,
Holt.
were also in it. But they had Adrian Belew, who was part of King Crimson and played guitar on Remain in Light, was part of that original group that before this tour started, that was playing like Remain in Light and Fear of Music stuff. And there's a really great concert footage you can probably find online of them playing in Montreux Jazz Festival, I believe.
Hmm.
And you just see that they've already got the chemistry and all that funk you're talking about. They're just dialed in. It's just, they were such an unlikely band to become such a force, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you see David Byrne, you're like, this like dorky, skinny, like what? What is this? What is this? And then he's got like the most funkiest, amazing musicians to like back up and make the Talking Heads music just even more bigger and funkier and amazing. You're just like, oh my
Bernie
God.
Worrell,
Yeah.
he's a
I
legend.
got to see Bernie Morrell at Nectar before he passed away play, and it's just like I'm like, God, can you come join my band, man? Like, what the hell? But yeah, I mean, and Bernie, played those songs because he genuinely liked those songs. I mean,
Yes.
Talking Heads were pretty funky, for like a group of dorky white kids. Like they're really, like really good. Yeah, and even the Tom Tom Club, you can just tell a lot of their influence with the Tom Tom Club and just like the Talking Heads, like are inspired by a lot of black music, and that's shown through even just looking at Stop Making Sense. The entire backing band is black, which is like incredible, but also like, yeah, this is the music where this is the culture this music's coming from, which I really appreciated seeing in that documentary, or I guess it's not a documentary, but in that music, that concert movie. But yeah, it's just incredible, and I mean, things from him dancing with the lamp on "This Must Be the Place" to like pictures of butts during the song, like just like they're so weird, they're so funky, and I'm just like, this is like gotta be one of the most perfect executed bands ever, but also had its, issues within their
Yeah.
I guess within their circle
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. Even the Tom Tom Club, which was selling really well, David Byrne was pretty dismissive of it. And I can't imagine the deal they made where, I mean, I know he had to go change into a different costume during the Tom Tom Club thing, but I still feel like, yeah, those two worlds kind of like of those two bands, it feels a little bit like, I don't know, like I'm going to throw them a bone or something like that to do their thing. It's so weird. They just did a recent interview with Spike Lee as this got reissued. And it was also really interesting because, like, a lot of people didn't know that this concert was not made to be filmed. It was like a stage show already that was documented. So they talked about how Jonathan Demme came and saw the show and got excited about it and wanted to make a film of it. The band raised all the money themselves. They raised $1.2 million to make the films themselves. They had Lisa Day, the editor, who edited Home of the Brave, the Laurie Anderson film, as well as the Hal Ashby film, the Rolling Stones film, Let's Spend the Night Together. Hal Ashby had developed a new editing system where they could look at all the camera footage at once on different screens. It was like really new technology for them. So they could point out the moments like, oh, Alex is doing something really interesting on the guitar there. And, oh, over here, you didn't notice, but like, Bernie stuck his tongue out. And so they could kind of weave this thing together with this new technology. It was basically like an ensemble film where you're getting to know the characters one by one.
Yeah.
And then you start learning the personalities of each of the people. You're like, oh, Jerry Harrison, he can't dance. He can't keep up. It's like really sweet. He's trying to do the stage moves, but he's got it backwards and he's holding on. And
I love the little Easter eggs that are in that film for sure on the stage.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really cool choices that just show like just somebody like looking at somebody else on the stage.
Yeah.
Like, and sharing a smile like, this is good, right?
Yeah. There's this part where Alex and Bernie are looking at each other after, I think after Bernie does he ends his solo, and Bernie and Alex are looking at each other, and then Bernie looks at him and kind of like does this like little shiver at Alex. It's really funny, and Alex kind of like just chuckles and it's just like, yes. And I pointed that out to my brother, and now we both just like do it, and we can't like unsee it. It's hilarious, and there's a lot of that like in the film. It's so great to watch.
And as you mentioned earlier, the band members are brought on one by one. Chris Franz comes out and plays Thank You for Sending Me an Angel. So it's the first moment where it's getting out of the acoustic thing and into the rock thing. And then Jerry Harrison comes out and plays Found a Job, which I was obsessed with as a kid. Once I learned to love the Talking Heads. Because it's a song about a couple trying to change their life, and they do it through writing television, like sitcoms. And it wasn't till a little while ago that I kind of thought about how it felt like David Byrne was taking the old rock and roll standard of jukebox hero. Like, yeah, he picked up a guitar, and a week later, he had the #1 song on the charts. and there's so many songs about that. But this is kind of like a really geeky industry way of talking about a different industry, but the same thing. I just thought it was really funny. I'd never really thought about how it's kind of the same story, but just in television. Like, we got the #1 show, and we started from nothing.
Yeah, it's great. And it's great that that's what it is. It's a television story and not like another music story coming from musicians. And one of the things I actually really love about that song during that performance is I think Tina's bass line is like the best. I immediately had to pick up a guitar and try to learn what she was playing.
She's incredible. She is such a big influence. I was a bass player first, and she was one of the top 3 for me in terms of, it was like,
she's unreal.
It was like
she's
her,
unreal.
Mike Watt, and Mike Mills from REM, because I could hear it. It was so different, and it was so essential. And also her stage moves are cool. Like, she'll just bend her knees one way back and forth, but there's a power to it. And I wanted to ask you about that too, because I know you are a very hyper performer, and I am a very hyper performer. But it is interesting watching this film, how some of the things they do are very slight and carry like a lot of lightning bolt to it. And it made me go like, oh, maybe I've been doing it wrong all these years.
I think, it's funny you say that, because I move around a lot because I don't have the chops. Tina has the chops, so she doesn't need to distract by shaking her butt in people's faces, because she's got the chops. And I'm like, I kind of play guitar, but you rather just want to see me make weird faces and kick my legs around. I'm distracting from my hands.
We are so similar. All these things you're saying, I'm just like, yes, I totally am the same way. I'm like, look at this. I'm going to crawl through John's legs right now. And I'm going to be a table, and I'm going to play guitar on the ground while he sits on me. It's just like, yeah, I'm just trying to get through the song. But yeah, she is incredible in it. And I also like that, there were moments where she would go up and play like synth keyboard, which I didn't really know that she was playing, that some of those songs
Yeah.
had a bass keyboard on it. I thought was really cool.
For Burning Down the House, she did
Yes.
that. And she was on guitar for This Must Be the Place, I think. Where she was doing those harmonic do 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 do. That was her.
Yeah, that was so cool.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Does your brother have any opinions on Chris Franz as a drummer?
He loves Stop Making Sense. But I have not specifically that I really have heard.
He's so interesting. He's got one of the most some of the best posture of a drummer I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like he's just really like rigid.
Yeah.
And when he's doing all the fills, they're like so emotive, but his body isn't moving.
Yeah.
It's just his arms. It's really kind of strange. And I think everyone in the band has a bit of that. And I don't know if you watch the early CBG's footage of them where they just seem so almost shy, or it's not embarrassed, but they almost feel like you just have to kind of give them the courage in a way to do what they're doing, for them to still embody a bit of that, but just also be so confident. Like they know that they are kicking ass in this thing.
Absolutely. And one of the things that reminds me of my brother, or what that reminds me of Chris when I see my brother drumming, is that they're both like happy drummers. They're not so like,
yes.
You know what I mean? Like my brother's like smiling and like singing too, and like like yelling stuff out, and I'm just like, and so yeah, I haven't heard him like personally really talk much about him, but they do kind of like, as far as their persona and like how they present when performing, it's pretty similar. It's really cute.
I think joy in performance is an underrated thing, especially.
Well, everyone wants to look like a badass, and like, I don't smile. It's like, come on.
I wanted to ask you if you had a favorite moment or song in this film, because at this point they're doing Life During Wartime, and that to me is the one that just kills me every time.
Yeah. That one's really great. Oh God. Just one. I really love Burning Down the House. That's my favorite Talking Head song, and I also really like the live one from that movie. It's so good. But Making Flippy Floppy is also like really close for me too. But I'm gonna go with Burning Down the House because I think that's the one I'll play in my car more often. As far as like the live off of the Stop Making Sense like soundtrack.
And it's weird because they were kind of just making Talking Head music. You listen to a song like Burning Down the House, and it is kind of like, what is it? It's got this really long, drony intro with this really weird, acoustic guitar lead, riff on it cycling through.
Yeah, and it's a much more energetic, of course, than like the original recording, the live one. But I mean, both are so good.
Yeah, and I love David's stage moves at this point. He does some things that are just so small, but they're incredible. Like in Life During Wartime, he starts just moving his knees back and forth.
I was going to point that out when he shakes his knees. He brings his knees in and out, and he makes his pants wave, and I'm like, ah! And the camera angle that they caught during that, I was like, yes.
And then he starts waving his arms.
Yeah, he was like a freaking like jellyfish or something. I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah, then he just gets into kind of grandpa dance mode where he's just like, I'm putting my elbows on my hips and I'm swinging them around and my knees are going back and forth.
I love it. And then he runs laps around at the end of the song around the stage. I'm just like, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
One thing I want to add too is when we were talking about the use of the space of the stage, like only David Byrne can like make running like a form of dancing.
Totally.
You know what I mean? I was just like, yeah, that's a dance move because he's doing it, and it works.
You steal any of his moves yet?
I want to say probably, and if not his, definitely Tina's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did that every night. These things were very calculated. It was very theatrical. Part of the reason he had the big suit was he was on tour in Japan, and he was asking about Japanese theater, and they're like, well, everything here is just larger on stage because, we just has to hit the back of the room. And he just took it literally. He was like, okay, I'm going to make everything kind of bigger, the suit.
Yeah.
But he also wanted to simplify things like lighting. When he comes
Mm-hmm.
out in the big suit, it's just like there's just a single light going across the stage. There's like a stagehand backlighting different people and creating shadows. And that also left a big impression on me when I was young. Just seeing their use of the stagehands and their performance were one and the same. People could walk in and out and do their thing and be introduced, and it felt like a collective. It felt like everybody was involved, and I was like kind of amazed. I was like, they gave somebody a light, and that's their job. They get to walk out there. How, like, that's amazing. They get to do that every night, and they don't know where they're gonna go. And I just thought,
Yeah.
yeah, it's incredible.
And there's a few performances where, yeah, it was just like maybe just a couple or few lights but their shadows were blasted behind them as a backdrop, which was super cool. I know Once in a Lifetime, I think, did that. Then the other song, I'm blanking on the name, the Whoa, that song had it.
Swamp.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. Just
Yeah,
like
they're
super just
backlit.
easy. Yeah. It's super cool.
Did you see American Utopia when it was on tour?
Me and my husband, we go to the East Coast around his birthday. That's where he's originally from. And we, as a birthday gift, I got him tickets to American Utopia, and it was like we didn't even realize it was about to be ending. So it was kind of within the last few months before it permanently stopped.
Nice.
But yes, we got to see it in person, and same gray outfits, not same, but like the gray color outfits. It was incredible, and it was a dream to we were
Yes.
3 rows from the front or 2 rows from the front or something like that. And I'm proud to say I made eye contact with David
Oh
Byrne,
my God.
and I can die now.
It was a great show. I actually took my family to see it, and I got us the same seats in the same box that I saw Talking Heads at the same
Wow.
theater at the Keller in Portland. I was like, I kind of want to just be in the same region. It's such a thoughtful show. Again, such a cool use of space. They had kind of, it wasn't like chain link, but it was,
Yeah, they look like it was chains, but I don't know what. Yeah, whatever the metal kind of drop, whatever that was. I know what you're talking about. I thought it was chains, but not like chains that are, used to keep a fence locked. Like they were smaller than that. But yeah, I thought that was a cool addition to that.
yeah. And none of the musicians have, again, no amplifiers on stage.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything's wireless. They've broken up the drum set to be carried and played on stage.
Yep.
So somebody's playing the kick drum and walking around. Somebody's playing cymbals and a snare. I think there was 3 drummers that made up a full kit. And then again, hands kind of coming through the chains and handing a guitar, and like no separation between stagehand and what's going on the stage. And they also even had somebody do like the single light thing and cast some shadows.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I hadn't realized that till I watched Stop Making Sense again recently.
And you know what I loved about that for American Utopia? What I loved about that particular instance of them using the backdrop is I feel like when you looked at David Byrne's shadow, you saw like his younger self in a way because it was just his silhouette. But you could imagine the Talking Head Stop Making Sense shadow of
Yeah,
David Byrne. That's what I took from that, and I was like, wow, it looks like I'm looking at David Byrne now and also David Byrne back then with the shadow.
I was blown away. I didn't really know what to expect. I was just excited to see David Byrne, after all this
Yeah.
time. He's easy to take for granted, I feel like, because
Mm.
he's kind of you can be like, oh, he's just kooky, and, he's just been around forever. But
He's a genius.
he is a genius. And those Talking Heads records are just peerless. I mean, they're classics. It's so interesting that they ended up having songs on classic rock radio, Take Me to the
Yeah.
River and Once in a Lifetime and, Life During Wartime. It's just so unlikely. Burning Down the House. And I'm just like, cool, weirdos got through.
Yeah.
which is,
Very true.
as you know from working on radio, it's always exciting when you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is known.
Yeah, and especially working at KEXP where we'll play any and everything if it's good, if it's a demo, if it has 3 likes on Facebook, we don't care if it's good, we'll play it. That's what I love about being at that station because we would if let's say the Talking Heads were just getting started, we would play them and we would have them in studio. We'd be like, you need to get on this. We wouldn't be waiting for
Yes.
Top 40 to do it first.
Right.
We would want to be the ones to do it first, you know? So
Right.
that's just like our mission. That's what makes it such a great station too, for that reason.
So you mentioned earlier, This Must Be the Place, Naive Melody. That little dance David does with the lamp is just, it's really lovely.
It
I mean,
is.
I never get tired of watching it.
What I liked about that performance was David Byrne with the lamp. So I'm like, he's such a weirdo, and I'm a weirdo.
Yeah.
And he's dancing with a freaking lamp, which I read back, I don't remember how far back, that I think he copied that from a movie, an old movie where an actor was doing that with a coat rack, I think is what it was. I don't think it was a lamp. I don't remember.
Okay.
But I was just like, that is so just bizarre and such a weird thing to do, but it makes for a great performance. And so I think as far as the music part goes, again, that's me just kind of winning myself over and like, do I love this song? Is this what I want to give out to the world? And
Right.
then as far as the performance part, that's where I'm like really considering the audience because I'm like, I want you to have a good time. I want to be vulnerable and I'm going to be weird.
Yeah.
And I want you to feel like you can relate. Like if you're like that, you can relate to me and we have this in common and we're in this together. And I'm not, you know, I don't even know how to put it. I'm performing to the back of the room, but it's also like, here's my guts, y'all.
Yeah. There's also a sense of them not being concerned of what people think of them or that they might,
Yes.
that they might come off a little uncool or it's geeky or it's not that sophisticated of a dance. There's a complete confidence to these little moments and just having a single prop and just there's only so much you can do with it. It can only go one direction or the other, but it just it just creates this lovely little moment with an inanimate object
Yeah.
that is kind of highly emotive and
Yeah.
it radiates off the screen. At the end of the film, they do "Cross-Eyed and Painless," which is my favorite Talking Heads song. I love the recorded version so much with all the Eno production and the weird guitars swimming around. Everyone just gets a moment. There's great guitar stuff between Alex and David just going nuts. They bring out the lights, come up in the audience. They bring out the stage crew. You see the film crew. Everything's just left on the stage. Jonathan Demme did a really great job of carrying that energy from that performance through the screen. When I saw this in the theater when it came out, the theater was up on their feet dancing to the movie. That's only
Oh
happened
yeah.
twice in my life where I've gone to a movie and people were dancing. And I just thought this is just a movie being projected, but people it was just on people. And I think it's just arguably the greatest concert film of all time.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. 1,000%.
So if there was a song that wasn't included in this film by the Talking Heads, what would you want to hear in it?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I think maybe Road to Nowhere.
All right.
Yeah. I really like that song.
What would they do for it, do you think?
Oh boy. I don't know.
That's got like the it's kind of got like a snare drum, like a
Yeah, the da 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 da. It's
yeah.
kind of a marching sort of rhythm. Um, yeah. Oh God, I don't know. I have to think about that. What would I wanted to do for that? Um,
Well, if you were doing a cover version of it, what would you do on stage?
what would I do? That's really funny you say that because I've literally have thought about that with that particular song. I would feature, so there'd be musicians on stage, of course, and then there would be a spotlight that would go to the person playing the accordion part, because
Hmm.
that accordion kind of comes out of nowhere. And then slowly more and more people kind of gather on the stage for that gang vocal of "We're on the road," and then soon I'm off of the stage, and then I'm like leading them out through the audience, just like chanting this "Road to Nowhere." I love songs that make me think of, um, and maybe they didn't mean it this way, but I'm like an existentialist where I I'm always thinking about like existing and what is it and consciousness and all those things. And I'm also like reasonably atheist, but if I'm going to be like accurate, agnostic, because I don't actually know what there is and isn't. But I think about like existentialism a lot, and that song reminds me of that, and it sounds like an anthem for that. It's the same reason why I like the Beatles' Nowhere Man, because that's the same message I get with that song. Like, he's a real nowhere man living in a nowhere land. I'm like, that's kind of what this shit is, right? You know? And maybe
It
these
is.
are like, that's not what these songs are supposed to mean, but that's what they mean to me. And so Road to
Yes.
Nowhere is one of those like existentialism songs to me that's just like, yeah, it's just like an anthem.
Oh,
Like, we're on a road to nowhere. And that's okay. There doesn't have to be heaven or hell. There's nothing. But we can
yes.
still like, can't we just get along anyway? I don't know.
That's amazing. I
Uh,
love it. That's the perfect answer.
it's so funny because people want to be like, "Oh, you're atheist, so you're going to hell." I'm just like, I don't know. I'm like a pretty ethical. I'm like one of the nicest atheists I know. Like, just because I don't really think there's anything that's gonna happen but me becoming worm food or dust or whatever, I don't
Oh,
need like a reason to be nice to people. I don't need like a adult Santa Claus as a reason to be nice to someone. Like that doesn't that's I don't need that. Like I could just die and nothing happens and I'm still gonna want to do good things for people. Like I don't know.
absolutely. Again, right there with you. Yeah, worm food and just be good to
Yeah.
people. I don't, yeah.
What's
It's
wrong with
like,
that?
exactly. At the end of every interview, I like to ask the same question, but I tailor it depending on the film. So, on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, how many David Byrne running laps around the stage do you give this film? Do you give it 1 or 10 laps? 1 to 10 laps.
Oh man, a good 15.
All right. That is the correct answer.
um
Yes, 15 is what I had written down here. That's perfect.
And I also just kind of want to wrap up by saying, my husband's really good at if we both really get into something, which for us together was watching during the pandemic Stop Making Sense over and over again. He's an interviewer as well. So he'll be like, you know what, I like talking to this person. I like talk and so he ended up talking to Lynn Mayberry and Ednah Holt during the pandemic just from watching that film.
Amazing.
And he got in touch with them and then introduced me to them. And if people are interested, you can check out our Sub Pop singles release, Mr. Minds, and it features vocals of Ednah Holt on the recording. So I just want to like throw that out there.
That is amazing. Is
Yeah.
that available online for
Yeah,
people
that's
to?
available on the Sub Pop site. It's available. I'm pretty sure I'm sure you can find it on our website. It might be on Bandcamp. I'm not sure.
I'll put a link to it in the show notes. I'll put a link to it for sure.
So we did get to do a song with Edna Holt, and it just stemmed from putting on Stop Making Sense every day.
And what was it like? I mean, what was that experience like working
We
with?
had to do it all, like virtually or whatever. So she would like send me files and I send it back or whatever. And it was great. She's a lovely person. We're still in touch. She checks in on me. I check in on her. She's in her 70s. And
Oh my
she's just, yeah, she's sweet. I mean, I remember at one point we spent, I don't know, like an hour on the phone, just like talking, just like, she feels like family. So I never thought in a million years I would get a chance to work with anyone that was on that Stop Making Sense stage.
yes.
And so it was just really an honor.
Yeah. And it's amazing, 70, it's just like this film captures them. They're just babies still.
Yeah.
David Byrne. I mean, they're like 31, it's
It's 84,
just
right? Is that when it
yeah,
was?
84.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it's nice. It seems like right now A24 is going to be doing a reissue of the film. And it'll be streaming soon too. And it's the first time the band's been together doing like interviews for the first time in a long time. And that's kind of been nice. I know that they have kind of a complicated kind of cold history post
Yeah.
Talking Heads. Chris Franz finding out that the band had broken up, like in a newspaper, things like that. But hey, youth, rock and roll,
Yeah.
it's complicated. That's why I was asking about your brother. I was like, all right, cool. Just make sure he doesn't read about anything in a newspaper about the band.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. It was great. It was really great to see you.
Thank you, Chris. This was really fun. Thanks for asking and reaching out. This was awesome. And I'm glad I got to do this one before anyone else did.
I also give it 15 laps and 3 white booted leg kicks from you as well.
That's right.
All right. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday, so be sure to search for the show on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the show. And if you've enjoyed this, it would mean a lot to me if you would rate and review it as well. You can follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie, and also find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye!